In the middle of a busy office filled with ringing phones, clicking keyboards, and whispered conversations, the tension was almost visible. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a dull glow on rows of desks where employees focused on their screens, trying to meet deadlines. Everyone seemed to keep their heads down, eyes flicking nervously toward the glass-walled office at the corner. Emma sat at her desk, quietly typing. She was one of those people you hardly noticed unless you needed something done. She didn't speak much and always kept to herself, but she was reliable. When tasks needed to be done right, Emma was the one who did them, without complaint and without drawing attention. Her coworkers often wondered why someone so capable stayed so quiet. Maybe it was because she wanted to avoid trouble, or maybe she just didn't trust the office politics. The boss, Miss Clark, was a sharp contrast. She ruled the office with a loud voice and an even louder temper. Known for her quick anger and harsh words, Miss Clark rarely missed a chance to remind everyone who was in charge. People whispered that she liked to keep the team on edge, but no one dared to speak up against her. Today the air was thick with unease, people avoided eye contact and barely breathed as Miss Clark stormed out of her office, eyes locked on Emma. It wasn't the first time Emma had been called out in front of the team. Last time, she had stayed silent, biting back the hurt. But this time, something felt different. The whole office held its breath, waiting. What would happen next? Miss Clark's sharp footsteps echoed through the room as she stopped right beside Emma's desk. Her voice cut through the quiet like a storm. "Emma, how could you let this happen? This mistake cost us the client," she yelled, her face red and eyes blazing. The words weren't just loud, they felt like a punch, hitting Emma straight in the chest. Emma blinked, stunned. She opened her mouth to explain, but the boss wasn't finished. "I don't want excuses. This is unacceptable." The other employees looked up from their work, their faces frozen with surprise and discomfort. Some quickly looked away, afraid to get involved. Others exchanged worried glances, but no one spoke. Emma's hands trembled as she stared down at her keyboard, unable to believe she was being blamed for something she hadn't done. She had double-checked everything the night before, stayed late to fix any errors, but now she was the one taking the fall. The silence after Miss Clark's outburst felt heavy, like the whole room was holding its breath. Emma's heart pounded, and tears threatened to spill, but she swallowed them down. No one had stood up for her before, and the thought of speaking out terrified her, yet something inside her shifted. Instead of shrinking back, Emma slowly lifted her head and met the boss's angry glare. Her eyes searched the faces around the room, seeing the mix of fear, guilt, and helplessness. For a moment, everything hung in the balance. Would Emma break down, or would she finally find her voice? The office waited, and then Emma did something no one expected. Emma took a deep breath, steadying herself. The room was silent, every eye on her. Slowly she lifted her voice, not loud, but clear and calm. "Miss Clark," she said, "I didn't make this mistake." She paused, feeling her heart hammering, but refusing to back down. "I checked the report twice last night. The error happened in the data entry, and it was John who uploaded the wrong file." A few heads turned toward John, who suddenly looked uncomfortable and avoided eye contact. Emma's coworkers exchanged surprised glances. No one had ever spoken up like this before. Miss Clark's face tightened. "Are you accusing a team member in front of everyone? That's insubordination," she snapped. Emma didn't flinch. "I'm stating facts, and I have proof." She pulled out her phone and opened her email. Here are the messages where John admitted to the mistake. A murmur spread through the room. The boss's mouth opened and closed, trying to find words but failing. Her usual sharp tone faltered, replaced by a flicker of doubt. Emma continued, her voice stronger now. "This isn't the first time I've been blamed unfairly. I've kept records of other times when things went wrong that weren't my fault." She glanced at the gathered team. "If you want, I can share them with HR." The atmosphere shifted. The quiet fear in the room gave way to a new feeling. Hope. One by one, co-workers started to look at Emma differently. She wasn't just a quiet worker anymore. She was someone willing to stand up. Miss Clark's eyes narrowed. "You're crossing a line, Emma." But Emma held her ground. For the first time, she was no longer invisible. The whole office was watching, and no one could deny what she'd just said. Something had changed. The balance of power was tipping, and the question on everyone's mind was clear: what would happen next? The silence that followed Emma's words was thick with tension. Then slowly a few coworkers began to speak, softly at first, then with growing confidence. "I've seen her yell at people for small mistakes," whispered Sarah, Emma's closest teammate. "It's not fair how she treats us." Another voice joined in. "I've been asked to cover her errors and take the blame when things go wrong." More heads nodded, and the room began to fill with stories of frustration and fear. Emma's courage seemed to unlock something inside the team. For the first time, the office was speaking out against the boss's harsh behavior. Miss Clark's face twisted with anger. She tried to interrupt, to silence them, but the voices wouldn't stop. The employees, once too afraid to speak, now stood together, quiet but firm. A powerful energy filled the room as they united. Emma's closest coworker, Sarah, stepped forward. "We support Emma. This has to change." The boss's control slipped further as she realized the team was no longer intimidated. The once fearful office now showed a quiet strength, and Miss Clark looked trapped in the shifting tide. Everyone held their breath. Would this be the moment the office finally stood up for itself? The tension hung like a storm about to break. Emma felt a strange mix of relief and fear. She had spoken up, and others had followed. But the path ahead was uncertain. What would happen to the team now? Would the boss fight back? As the office waited, the balance of power seemed to shift, hinting at a change that no one could ignore. After the tension in the office reached its peak, Emma took the next step. She requested a meeting with Human Resources, bringing along the evidence she had collected, emails, messages, and written accounts from coworkers who had witnessed Miss Clark's harsh behavior. HR listened carefully, surprised by the volume of complaints. They had heard whispers before, but this was the first time so many voices had come together with proof. Emma's calm, clear presentation left little room for doubt. Miss Clark, meanwhile, tried to defend herself, denying the accusations and blaming the team for causing trouble. But her usual confidence was shaken under HR's scrutiny. The office waited anxiously for the outcome. Then came the announcement. Miss Clark would be temporarily suspended while an investigation took place. The news spread quickly, and a mix of shock and relief swept through the employees. Emma felt a wave of emotions: pride in standing up, fear of what might come next, and hope that things could finally improve. Her courage had sparked change, but the fight wasn't over. The once quiet office buzzed with cautious optimism. The balance of power had shifted, but the future remained uncertain. Everyone knew that this moment was only the beginning of something bigger. With Miss Clark away, the office atmosphere slowly began to heal. Conversations felt lighter, and the tension that had weighed down the team started to lift. Emma found herself no longer overlooked, but respected for her courage. Her coworkers, inspired by her bravery, started speaking up when things didn't feel right. The company promised to review its policies and improve how employees were treated. Though the path ahead was still long, Emma's stand had planted a seed of change. She reminded everyone that no one had to stay silent in the face of injustice. As the story closes, there's a quiet hope in the air, a hope that courage and unity can break the silence and bring a better, fairer future for everyone.